Hello and welcome to pentalk.
All right, yeah, welcome everybody. So let's start today with introducing our pens. We've got the Pilot Easy Touch Fine Point in blue.
In blue.
We've got the the Right Dudes Ultra Fine Gel in 0.5 mil flavor, and that's a black ink.
Now I've heard good things about this pen. I haven't actually tried it out myself,
Yeah,
but I've heard good things about it. And then we had one more pen.
we have one more pen.
This is actually it's different from most of our pens. It's a art pen.
It's a little bit, yeah, it appears to be an art pen. It's a felt tip marker, or not marker, pardon me. It's a felt tip pen, that is.
No.
And so it's
Could
a little
be construed as a marker.
little bit, yeah. It's a little departure from what pentalk it has been used to. We're usually with the ballpoints or the roller balls, but
But that's what pentalk is about, innovation.
yeah, venturing into new territory on with Starship Enterprise.
All right, so let's start with the old
The Pilot.
Pilot Easy Touch Fine Point.
Mhm.
Now, initial impressions. It's a blue pen, sleek. It's got a clear body, all the way plastic clip. It has a little bit of uniformity to it. Its grip is blue, along with the whole inner workings of the clicker mechanism. That's all blue. And I like this design. I think it's really sleek.
Mhm.
It makes the pen seem really simple.
It's like it's a costed down version of a G2 body by all appearances.
Yeah. It does. I am getting a pretty strong G2 vibe off of it.
Yeah, it's very possible that the clicker mechanism is actually identical.
Yeah.
But we'll take it apart and we'll get to the bottom of it.
So let's take it apart right now. Oh, like most pilots, it unscrews in the middle.
Unscrews in the middle,
I'm a
and
fan of that.
very, very G2 in that aspect of the construction too. The part that screws apart is very similar to those G2 ridges. So
Now there is something right here. The spring itself is actually rather small, and that's something Pilot doesn't usually do. And I respect this. I think it gives the clicker a much more easy feel.
with a
doesn't-
long spring, that is.
It's actually not that long.
Oh no. Okay.
I would say it's
okay.
about 2.5 centimeters long, and it's very thin, very delicate, and it gives it. When I was clicking, I could really tell that it doesn't have much resistance.
Mhm. And you're a fan of the smooth clickers,
I
just like
I
the
am.
Signo.
I like yeah.
Mhm.
Signo is a smooth clicker. Now taking it apart further, here's the
So
ink cartridge.
if you're familiar with just sort of your standard ink pen, it's a thin body cartridge. So it's not the classic thick body gel cartridge you might be used to from a Signo or a G2. It's thin body, so similar to a lot of more everyday pens. Less of the workhorse pens and more of that budget oriented pen. And it's also rather short.
Yeah.
The form factor is very strange because it's short, like the other, like the G2 ink cartridge, but it's that thin design, which you don't see a lot of.
So it seems to me what this Easy Touch is trying to do, it's really towing the line between workhorse pen and budget pen.
Yeah,
It finds itself right in the middle.
so we have just extracted the clicker mechanism. Oh wow! Look at that, the
long
clicker. That's
mechanism.
enormous.
That is really unique.
Wow. So this is a really very interesting discovery here. That it's just like the G2. It's the same mechanism, but the external part of the clicker body, the actual part that you click, is twice as long approximately.
Yes.
And the intermediate clicker mechanism appears to be the same. And the ridges inside the pen body are simply moved farther down the body of the pen.
So this seems to be a difference. This seems to be the reason why the cartridge is so short.
Yeah.
That they made. So I guess it must be a stylistic choice for making the clicker mechanism so long.
Yeah, you add a little bit more color to the end of the pen in the body area, so it seems like it's got some more substantial construction. But Yeah, that's very, very interesting departure from the G2. Even though it functions on the same basic mechanism, it's just
It's lighter.
a strange and interesting change of pace.
I think it's because of the clear body. The long clicker really gives you that look that you see with the uniform, the blue grip and the blue clicker.
Yeah, they're approximately they're similar in length, so
Yeah.
the blue grip and clicker match up better. If that clicker mechanism had been any shorter, it would almost seem like they were uneven.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice made by Pilot with their easy touch. So, now let's give it a rate. This is a fine point, and I'm giving it the regular test on a single sheet of paper on a hard table. So let's give it a rate. Wow. So my initial impression is that this is actually a quite smooth pen.
It's smooth, yeah, and it's a dry ink pen, but it's got that same sort of Pilot excellence that you would expect from their pens.
Yeah. It really feels like a typical gel pen, I would say.
Yeah,
It
great
feels like
Japanese
one of the-
construction. It's fantastic.
One of the Bics, perhaps.
It does.
The gel seems to sit higher on the paper.
Yeah, it's very dry.
It doesn't really
It doesn't
it's
smear.
dry. It doesn't really seep into the paper that much.
This would be a great ink for addressing letters because it's permanent. If you're looking for that thin line, you're looking for a thin writing, thin address on this letter.
Most definitely.
It's not going to bleed when it gets wet because it's a drier, more viscous ink. So, whereas if you write with like a G2 or more liquid ink, it does have a tendency to bleed upon contact with water.
Yeah, there's probably no chance for this to bleed.
Yeah.
Now, I know we talk a lot about clickers on this show, and oftentimes when we get a plastic clicker, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But this clicker, it seems to like most of the Easy Touch, it's really it's towing the line between budget and workhorse pen.
Yeah, it is. You can, since you're not here in the studio with us, you may not have a pen with you. The clicker, it's a little bit of a just a vertical offshoot from the body of the pen, and then sort of a flat surfboard design attached to that.
It does have a little bit of bowing in
Yeah.
the middle, which it looks pretty nice.
Yeah.
You can tell just by flicking it with your pen, you can tell that it's very bendy. That's how I would describe it, and it seems to be cheaper than most other pens.
Yeah,
And
it can flex.
it can flex
but
quite a bit.
Don't mistake that for being, for being indestructible and allowing you to put your thumb underneath that,
Yeah.
because this is a clicker that will not quite allow you to do that.
Because of course it is plastic,
Yeah.
and you should try to stay away. What I think's interesting about this Easy Touch is how clear the body is and how you can see straight into the mechanism. They're not trying to hide that at all.
No, it seems they're very proud of this Pilot clicker mechanism for the medium body pens.
And it is very smooth. As I said before, with the small spring, you're going to get less resistance on your push, and I think they really use that to good effect. The clicking seems very smooth and very natural.
Yeah, it's smooth with a very positive engagement. It's good. The grip is also different than a G2. Whereas the G2 might have like a full ribbed grip all the way up, the Easy Touch has sort of teardrop shapes along the silicone grip, and those teardrop shapes are ribbed. So one might assume that that's for resting your thumb, forefinger, and middle finger independently on these different ribbed portions of the silicone grip.
Mm-hmm.
And the comfort factor, it's there. It's good. It's like writing with a triangular pencil, which you may have seen in your life.
Yeah.
It's a different ergonomic take on the idea, but it's welcome. It's a pleasant place to put your hand.
It is a very light pen.
Mm-hmm.
It's-
It's a very light body.
It's really... It's not going to be doing any of the work for you. If you need to write
No.
hard, you're going to have to push down hard.
Yeah.
You're not just going to be able to let it fall in.
Yeah. So, and you might attribute that to the lack of ink that it has. It's got that smaller quantity of ink in that narrow cartridge, unlike the full-fledged G2, which has that large body cartridge.
Mhm.
But the tip of the pen is looks like the same construction as the G2. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the same ball and tip. It's a cylindrical metal piece
Well, they do have to modify it a little bit because
tapering
of
up to a point with a ball set in it.
the smaller spring.
Yeah, so it's slightly different, but the writing experience is very comparable, and it's the pilot style that they bring to the table, and it's
The very
very
pointed
similar.
metal tip on the.
Yeah, that is.
And that's because this is a fine point pen that we're using here today.
Yeah.
So I'm worried about the longevity of this pen. The ink cartridge seems to be really small.
Yeah, it's
And
something that could be an issue.
It may not last you. And if you're worried about that, maybe this isn't the pen for you. Of course, it does seem to be a budget pen. I don't know the exact price of how much it costs, but
It's safe to assume that it's less than a G2.
yeah. And it might be a good choice if you don't really want to shell out the big bucks for a pilot.
Yeah.
Some pens can actually get kind of costly, and this pen might not.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yep.
just a great value spot to enter the pilot lineup.
Yep. I would say it falls it's pretty far away from maybe the Bic ultra cheap.
Yeah.
Some of those.
Right. But it's
'Cause it
important
does-
to consider it's a medium body. It's not a thin body like the Bics.
Yes, it does have a clicker mechanism.
Yeah.
And that's really nice. And the fragile clip might be more of an indicator of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not metal. There's no metal in this design except for the spring, of course.
Aside from the spring and the tip of the cartridge.
That's very classic pilot, I would say.
Yeah, they're big fans of the plastic construction, and they use it to good effect.
Really, yeah.
So,
So
that's it.
That's the Pilot Easy Touch.
Yeah.
Maybe go try one out.
So, next pen up is a little bit of a departure. We've never seen this pen before, which mixes it up a little bit. This is the Write Dudes. That's the WRITE Dudes. This is the ultrafine gel, 0.5 mil. So, if we're taking a look at it, initial impressions, I don't know how I feel about this click. When you're clicking it with your index finger, there's some wiggle and some play that's a little strange.
There's a bit of play.
And there's
Some reverberations from the click that you can feel back in your thumb.
Yeah, there's some feedback, and you can feel the mechanism sort of sliding up and down, which is different, and it's maybe a little disconcerting, but I'm sure something you can overlook after a while. So,
I do have something to say about this clicker.
Yeah.
The clicker is very unique. It harks back more to a tool look. It looks very sleek. It's very there's very straight lines.
yeah, it's a flat-topped clicker.
flat top.
As opposed to a dome clicker.
Yeah, and you don't see those too often.
No.
Also, the clicker is a different color than the clicking mechanism.
Yeah.
And again, the whole pen, like the Pilot Easy Touch.
It's a transparent body pen. But the clicker is a smoked gray.
Yeah, and I like it.
Yeah, it's good. It adds a little bit of flair to the end of a pen that, and it balances out the visual weight from the black grip up front.
Yeah, it is a very, very dark black grip. Talking about the grip, this is a pretty unique grip. It seems kind of not necessarily cheap, but there's no sort of ribbing or any
There's no texturing to the
Yeah.
grip. It's a smooth,
black rubber
Yeah.
silicone grip.
and
right there in the pen.
it's it feels rather tacky. When you rub your finger across it, you can feel some skin come off. You can see that. So it's a little bit of a tacky grip, and you might be familiar with those sort of tackier, softer silicones. So let's just dive right into the writing experience. So name test right off the bat.
The tip of the pen, actually, on the ink cartridge, it's very similar to, I would say,
A Pilot Precise
Yep.
series. Yeah, a V.
Pilot Precise series. It is a fine point, and it really looks it. It doesn't have any of the usual, much like the fine point G2s.
Yeah.
It doesn't go sharp into a point.
It's
it
just
has
a very thin
very
cylindrical
thin tip.
Yeah, with the ball sitting in it. And This is just a very pleasant size for a gel roller, I think, the 0.5 millimeter, because you get a dark defined line, and you have the ink to thank for that, the gel ink. But you
Most
also get a
definitely.
thinner line without as much scratching as a .375 like Pilot offers,
Yeah.
and they're extra fine.
.375s do tend to scratch.
Yeah, they can get rather scratchy, and this is just not very scratchy. Writing on, this is one sheet of paper on a hard surface. So this is really pleasant. The ink is bold, to say the least. I don't know if it has the same weight as perhaps Pilot gel ink. It doesn't have the same bold black color, but it sits there and it works very handsomely. Gel pen, excellent for connected letters, excellent for looping sort of writing.
It is it's a wetter ink. It's not quite as dry as the Pilot Easy Touch,
Yeah, it's a gel ink. So
and it's really, I would say it's really smooth. I am enjoying writing with this.
that's very pleasant.
The holding it in your hand, the grip, there's no slide to this grip.
Yeah, that tackier rubber you have to thank.
Yeah.
So even without any sort of texturing, it still grips your fingers pretty well.
So let's take it apart.
Yeah.
It appears to come apart at the tip.
So
Very
this
classic
is
construction.
this is a
Oh,
uniball
wow.
style construction. The cartridge
Oh wow,
is
this is a sleek cartridge.
very very impressive. It's sort of
It's a metallic cartridge.
you know,
I don't know if it's actually made of metal.
space age chromed appearance. This is very very impressive. I don't believe it's actually metal, but it appears to be a metallic colored reflective plastic. It has the word China embossed in it, so you know where the ink cartridge is coming from. It's not a Japanese pen like the Pilot. It's a Chinese made pen. But
At least
I
in
mean, there's
cartridge.
nothing to say that detracts from the pen. Definitely don't base your experience on a kind of manufacturer's country. It's all to do with the manufacturer themselves, and this goes for any product. So don't be biased when you hear that something was manufactured in China, because this is a very excellent pen
This
as
is
far
a-
as it appears.
It is unique.
It's very
It's
unique.
definitely unique.
There's no end plug on it, so it's got an open end to this ink cartridge, and it's thin, very thin at the tip. That might be an issue. It might be kind of brittle, but it's in the pen casing, so that shouldn't be a problem as long as it remains in the pen casing.
So now, like most of this does have a very unique clicker mechanism as well.
Yeah, it's sort of it's a
The
A
clicker
Pilot
mechanism
style.
actually does not come out.
no
It
any
appears that-
despite any pushing with the cartridge from the opposite side, we can't force the clicker mechanism out of the pen.
You can see that what we originally thought was just the whole clicker mechanism, the dark gray part of it. It actually is just what appears to be a cap on what the actual clickering mechanism is, which is a milky white that you can see in the pen through the clear outer shell.
Yeah.
And it does make use of the inside of the pen, like much of the Pilots do, with the rotational,
Yeah.
the rotational aspect of it.
Absolutely. It looks similar to the Pilot clicker mechanism, except it has fewer fins, so it's a little bit of a coarser look. And it's possible that is to blame for the more coarse feel and feedback that you get from it, is because there are fewer ribs, or the ribs just happen to be bigger in this pen. So
Definitely.
very, very interesting. And this is, again, a medium body pen, which is safe to assume for your average gel pen with a clicker.
Now this does appear to have a pretty thick ink cartridge. I mean, it's not quite as thick as the G2.
It's not as thick as a G2 or a Signo.
Signo.
Yeah.
Those are on in the upper echelon of thick.
But this is,
thick ink
this is
cartridges.
interesting. It's like a medium size of an ink cartridge. So,
And the
It's-
longevity would probably be pretty good.
yeah, you can see it. It's situated between, in terms of the diameter of the ink cartridge, it's between that sort of G2 level and then your average dry ink thin cartridge level.
And the spring, as you can see here, it's a normal size spring.
Yeah,
pretty
it's a little
long.
bit of a longer spring for a more supple feel in the travel.
Most definitely.
Hmm.
It does have a very soft clicker.
Yeah, it
Uh,
clicks soft. The
except
spring
for
doesn't
the
have very
what we
much
were saying
resistance.
with some of the scratching that you can feel.
Yeah, other than the back end feedback that you can feel through your thumb, that I mean, there's no other issues with the clicker mechanism. It hasn't failed yet. There hasn't been any
Definitely.
sort of clicker
Yeah.
let down, so it's very solid.
Appears to be a hearty clicking mechanism.
Yeah, and so with the pen coming apart at the tip, that also leaves the ridge that keeps the grip on. That leaves that exposed, so you can remove the grip for whatever purposes that may serve for you.
Perhaps they have some replaceable grips you can get.
It's possible, or you could even jerry rig a grip from a different pen,
Yeah,
or
if you don't
perhaps
like
an aftermarket grip.
if you don't like this grip.
Yeah.
It seems that this pen offers plenty of options, except for the fact that you can't take the clicking mechanism out.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's look at the clip. It seems to be plastic.
It's
There is a metal sheen
similar
running
to the
top
Easy
of it.
Touch again.
So it's a stylistic choice. It does kind of look a little bit out of place on the pen, I would say.
Well, but then
The-
you have that mirrored ink cartridge in the middle. So
Oh, it's true.
there's a little bit of a visual tie in there, but it's also kind of a strange addition to have these stripes of metallic in this otherwise clear and
Plastic
smoked
pen.
plastic pen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole design is actually really angular.
Yeah, it's
As
very
you can see,
angular.
there's hardly any, even on the tip. Some tips may have sort of
A little- yeah.
concave into the tip,
a bit of a curve, more of that aerospace look.
but this one is very direct, very cone shaped,
Yeah.
and it seems pretty average pen, I would say. Like they didn't try too hard in the design, but it has an overall feel of it works well.
It does its job.
Together.
Yeah. The grip grabs your fingers. The medium body is as comfortable as the average medium body is in your hands. And while the clicker's not quite there, the writing experience is definitely commendable. And the ball sits at an excellent size between a .7 and a .375.
Yeah. I am always a fan of .5 pens, although they can be kind of hard to come across.
It's true. It's
I
a
was
rarer size.
Over about a few months ago, I really wanted blue Uniball Signo
Yeah.
.5,
Sure.
and I just couldn't find that anywhere. It wasn't at Walgreens. It
Mhm.
wasn't at Office Max.
Wow.
I could only find it in 16 packs on the internet.
Wow. Yeah.
And
See, that's a very.
I wasn't ready to buy that many of them. Like,
yeah.
I wasn't ready to buy the last pack of pens I would ever want in my life, because that's a lot of pens.
It's a big
16?
commitment. 16. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
Especially with the sort of longevity you can achieve with a Signo.
Definitely. Yeah. Now, you know what? You know what I think it's time for?
Yeah, it's time to wet our whistle.
Let's talk a little tea. Tea of the day.
Welcome to Tea of the Day.
What do we have today, Santi?
So today we have Choice Organic Teas Darjeeling Tea.
Darjeeling.
So this is a very, this anyone listening who's familiar with tea should know Darjeeling tea, right?
It's
your
famous.
classic black tea from the Darjeeling region in India, which is renowned for its tea.
Yeah.
The best tea in India.
And it was organic. I drank all mine up, but it's a very black tea. It was pretty strong. I only had mine steep for about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And it was already pretty strong.
Yeah, I've got a little bit lingering in the cup, and it's you can feel the tannins. They're very pronounced, so you get that dry mouth feel.
Yeah. It has a certain aftertaste, like most black teas.
Yeah, that's the tannins to blame. Like in red
Yeah.
wine, you may find.
It's a powerful tea.
It is, and it's robust. It's just what you want from a black tea. It's a great way to wake up in the morning, I would say. And an organic tea from an excellent region. There's not a whole lot to ask. So we haven't really talked the production of black tea yet on our show, so I'd just like to cover that briefly.
Let's get a little bit
Black
of that.
tea is the picked leaves of tea, but then they're left to ferment for a short amount of time, and then they're
Yeah.
dried and packaged and sold. That's in contrast to green tea, where the tea leaves don't experience any kind of fermentation. They're just dried straight away and then packaged and sold.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of a difference, and you're going to get a more robust flavor with some more earthy and some more harsh undertones that can be achieved with a black tea.
Most definitely. So, Darjeeling tea.
Choice
That was
organic Darjeeling.
that was the tea of the day. Now, moving on to our final pen in our lineup today.
It's a little bit of a mystery meat. It's something we haven't seen before, and the markings are all rubbed off from
Ooh.
where.
Yeah, I can't really make that out.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to see this markings. So we're just not quite sure. It's possible. It may say micron. We
That
can
is-
we can pull up an
We'll-
image of
we'll have-
micron. We can pull up an image of micron pens and just verify, real quick. But it has a seal at the end of it, and it's it's a circle with an AP in the middle, and this is what appears to be some sort of verification seal from an independent agency, because you might find the same sort of seal on other permanent markers or Sharpies and stuff.
It is something we haven't really checked out in the show before. It is what one would describe as an art pen.
Yeah,
It's more for less for writing and less for the usual, note taking,
Sure.
writing down, signing things.
yeah.
This is more for drawing.
Third from the right.
This does not appear to be a micron.
Yeah.
Does it?
This
it is. This is a micron.
So verified.
it has verified
is-
micron.
A micron pen. So it's the micron snap top, and just looking at the top real quick, cylindrical. The whole pen is cylindrical body, similar to a Pilot Precise V7, and it's very much in that same sort of vein. It's got the thin tip with the ball sitting in it, very cylindrical look, snap top with a metal clip at the top. What's interesting about the clip is that the clip is very short and the cap is very short, and the clip is parallel to the cap, and it feeds into a sort of band that wraps around the very top of the cap. And that's a nice look. It gives it a little bit of flash, a little panache that otherwise the pen might not have.
Most definitely.
And it's just a little more excitement for an otherwise very, very clean and understated pen.
It is definitely. There's sort of a muted grayish green.
Yeah, it's like a...
Is the whole body of the pen. There's no see-through parts of this.
Yeah, it's sort of a cool flesh tone, apparently,
There's
from what it appears.
there's a black finish on the end of the pen,
Yeah, and that's to
which-
denote the ink color, I
which
assume.
really, it also stands out.
Yeah.
The clipping the back of the cap actually on the back of the pen, it's a very sharp click. There's no much like the Precise V series. It just kind of slides on there until friction stops it. This actually has
This has a click, so
This
it's a
has a
very
click.
positive engagement.
and let's get into the writing.
The front grip, there's no silicone grip. It's just a
yeah.
stepped cylindrical design, which
Yeah.
is
It's
kind
very
of cool
sharp.
looking, actually. It's sort of...
until the tip, which
Yeah.
doesn't actually have any V. It's just a long little skinny tip leading with ending with a little felt point at the very top.
Yeah. So this sort of step design is comparable to like an ancient Egyptian step pyramid or a Mesopotamian ziggurat, potentially.
I would agree with that.
Just a very very elongated version of that sort of image.
If you actually look directly down the barrel of the pen, you can see there's something interesting about that. It's missing a little bit of space.
It appears as
and
if
you can look down into the pen actually.
Yeah, it appears as if the cartridge sits suspended by 4 little plastic struts from the outer body of the grip, and
It's very interesting.
it sits in the body of the pen. That's very strange. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that before. The tip is very handsome. It's that thin body felt tip on the end, and it spreads out into connecting to the wider bit.
So
Tony, you've already written a little bit.
Yeah,
of this.
I've given this a little writing test. I've drew some pictures. Neither of us are really much of artists.
Mhm.
We're usually using pens for various everyday uses.
Yeah, for writing primarily.
Yeah.
It's just...
But for drawing, this doesn't seem bad. The ink dispersal is very uniform.
Mm-hmm.
I can vary darkness based on sort of how hard I press.
Yeah.
Not too much. There's not too much variant, but maybe enough shading. Maybe the darkest part of a shadow versus the lighter part.
Yeah, it's enough that you can
Um,
work with it. Absolutely.
Now, if you were planning to use this for writing, I would suggest you don't. There is one problem. Felt tips see this a lot. The ink doesn't actually come out of the whole felt tip. It only comes out of the very top. So if, like me, you have a very sideways hold on the pen
Yeah.
as you use it, you're not going to get really any ink. It's going to be choppy at best, and even with a brand new felt tip, it's really not going to last.
Sure.
You really got to have this pen pointed straight down to get the nice ink dispersal that I was talking about.
Yeah. So we can move over here. It's just definitely not an excellent writing experience if that's what you're going for.
It's very grippy,
Holding
like
it
felt pens are.
Yeah, it grabs the paper to a degree, and unless you're writing almost straight down, you're not going to get the ink dispersal that you want. But for drawing purposes, this will definitely
Suffice.
this will satisfy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very well-known brand, like all Microns are, very well-renowned. If you're an artist, you've probably heard of Micron.
Yeah. Any sort of pen drawing experience, it makes it very pleasant. This
Yeah.
is nice. You don't need to worry about smearing, as this is a felt tip.
Yes.
Or so not smearing, but you don't
Yeah.
need to worry about ink gumming up at the end like you
Yeah.
might with a gel roller.
It's gonna be very uniform.
Yeah, it's puts down very clean lines. And
Very dark lines. The ink doesn't actually appear to bleed at all, though.
no, that's very interesting to me, because with a felt tip you'd assume that it has a very liquid ink, but it doesn't bleed a lot, and you can vary the size of the line by changing the angle at which you write, and that's very interesting, and it's sort of behaviorally it might challenge you to write like you might with a fountain pen, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas a more angular stroke will give you a thicker line, and then the more you tilt it away from the paper, the more acute you make the angle to the paper, you get a very thin, precise
thinner
line.
line.
It's easy to achieve.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Now, if you're writing, if say you're drawing a line and then you stop, you're drawing a straight line, and you stop. There isn't actually much of a circle that forms. It's rather low key. You can definitely tell you stop there, but the ink doesn't actually pool up that much, and I think that would be helpful with artist.
Yeah.
If you draw with pens, this is a good pen for you.
All right. So that concludes our last pen for today on Pen Talk.
Yep.
Little bit of a change, something new for us. We've never really
An
touched
art
an
pen.
art pen before.
These were lots of new pens.
The right dudes
The
never
right-
even
the right dudes. I've
experienced the
never-
brand before.
Never heard of that brand. But turns out it's a solid pen.
Yeah.
And
Excellent pen. And then
Ye old.
your Pilot Easy Touch,
Yep.
which would work as an excellent budget alternative to a Pilot G2.
Yep. So this has been Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm Santi.
And I'm Tony.
Come in next time.
Yep.
Keep on writing.
Keep on writing. There you go. Oh, we kept it short that time. Nice.
Very concise.
Not bad.